Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for coming tonight. The Port Washington Library Board of Trustees Candidate Nights, organized by the Port Washington Manhasset League of Women Voters, welcomes you to tonight's discussion. My name is Regina Gouvenier, and I'm co-president of our league. Before we begin, I must thank the Port Washington Library for providing us with the candidates' contact information. Special thanks to Lynn Mosner, assistant to the director, and Keith Klang, the library director, for being very patient and helpful. A thank you as well to Judy Estequist and Cheryl Henderson, our technical advisors. They've been very generous with their time. Thank you also to Judy Temkin Jacobson for organizing this event, Marie Bellin for timing, and Helen Kotsky for vetting questions. I want to tell you briefly about how the League of Women Voters works to develop an informed electorate and encourage speaking out on issues. The League is a nonpartisan organization which never supports individual candidates. The League does study issues that are important to our democracy and comes to an agreement on a position after study. We then lobby legislators to support our positions. We also register voters, compile and distribute information about registration deadlines, procedures, and candidates for each office. Applications for an absentee ballot are available at the Information, South Wing Reference, and Administration desks on the Port Washington Public Library website or at curbside pickup. Once the application is received, an official ballot will be mailed if they receive the application before April 6th, or it will be hand-delivered after April 6th by the district clerk or the librarian in charge. The library budget vote and trustee election is scheduled for April 13th at the library from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. We organize events like tonight so the electorate can meet the candidates. We hope you will join us. Remember, the League is not for women only. Judy Temkin Jacobson will be our moderator for this evening. She is not from Port Washington, as our rules require she not be. She will now read the rules and procedures. We will then move on to opening statements and questions from the audience. Thank you very much. Oh, okay, Judy?
Yes, now.
There you go, good, okay.
Now they started my video.
Good.
First, the moderator will be a member of the League of Women Voters from outside the district. And I'm from outside the district. The moderator will determine the order of speaking. We are going to speak in alphabetical order tonight. Third, each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes for an opening statement. After all the candidates have spoken, the moderator will open the virtual forum with questions from the audience, submitted electronically either before or during the forum. Electronic addresses for submitting the questions have been publicized with the forum and are available on the League of Women Voters website. The moderator will be the arbiter of whether questions are appropriate, repetitive, or abusive. Questions may be addressed to a specific individual or to the candidates in general, though all candidates will be given an opportunity to answer any question addressed to a specific individual. Each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to answer each question. At the moderator's discretion, time for a response may be reduced as long as it is the same for everyone. There will be no rebuttal. A league member will act as timekeeper, that's Marie Bellon, 1/2 minute from the end of any given time period. The timekeeper will warn the speaker by a prearranged signal. We have practiced this already. When the time is up, the speaker will be allowed to finish the sentence. Repeatedly speaking past the deadline may result in a candidate being muted. Candidates have 2 minutes for a closing statement and will speak in the same order as the opening statement. Since the purpose of the meeting is to determine the candidate's views, no substitute speakers will be allowed to appear should a candidate be unable to attend. The use of props, charts, or visuals, or the display of campaign literature is prohibited. In accordance with league policy, audio or video recording by authorized members of the media will be permitted only if agreed to by all candidates present. The league maintains the right to record the forum and publish it on the League of Women Voter-controlled electronic pages. No other recording will be allowed. No partial transcript or recording may be published without advance permission from the league. And now we will begin. The first person to give an opening statement is Nancy Comer. Nancy?
Thank you, Judy and the League. I'm Nancy Comer and running for my 3rd term as a library trustee. I'm a writer, editor, and publishing consultant who's worked for a number of national magazines and newspapers, from Mirabella to the New York Times. I've served on the boards of many not-for-profits, including Community Mainstreaming and our local Baxter's Pond Foundation. I'm also one of the many people who love our library. In the 49 years we've lived in Port Washington, my family's borrowed thousands of books. We're all aware, though, that this is not a library only. It's the cultural center of our community, and a fine one at that, even on Zoom. As a trustee for 10 years, I'd like to take a little credit for that, and also a little credit for the promotion of Keith Klang, our fabulous director. During my current term, I've used my skills and been closely involved with major renovations such as the expanded children's library and a new adult learning center. Our talented staff has created an enormous menu of programs. You name it, we have it. We're the envy of other libraries for our volunteer programs, including the energetic advisory councils that have continued to bring art, music, nautical adventure, and more to our patrons throughout this past year. Our digital services are among the best in the county, and nobody rivals us for online local history. Now we're planning digital labs and maker spaces, all that, and we have books too. Our immediate challenge has been, of course, COVID-19. The library aggressively responded to the pandemic by adding more online services accessible both within the building and the parking lot, as well as from home. We'll continue to adapt to the post-COVID needs of the community through a combination of in-person and virtual services. Government budget cuts to libraries have begun. The challenge is keeping the quality high and expanding services without burdening the taxpayer. And this we've done. The proposed 2021-22 budget is the same as last year's and has 0% tax increase. Our library is lucky to have 2 excellent fundraising arms, the Friends of the Library, which also produces sought-after programs, and the Library Foundation. Our next big challenge will be technology. How will our library fit into this wildly changing environment? We also have burdening special needs populations, seniors, residents for whom English is a second language, and people who are disabled. We need to increase programming for them. I was instrumental in implementing Books for Dessert, a book club program now virtual that targets adults with developmental disabilities, for which I helped raise more than $35,000. I want to help our library do what it does best, maintain itself as one of our community's most valuable resources, as well as aid its ongoing transformation to meet whatever challenges it faces. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Bill Keller. Bill, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? We won't start timing until you're unmuted.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Now you're unmuted. Great.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. I'm very happy to speak with you tonight about our great library. Our library has always been a place where we can explore the world and universe while also socializing with friends. It is a priceless gem that serves the educational and cultural needs of everyone. For the last 5 years, I've had the honor to serve as a trustee. I'm very proud of all that we accomplished and look forward to working with the board, the library's outstanding staff, our many wonderful volunteers, and the Port Washington community to make our library even better. I would like to take a minute to explain how I can contribute as a trustee. First, the library must continue to offer outstanding programming and services. Over the past year, we aggressively responded to the pandemic by offering virtual programming and substantially increasing the availability of audio, ebooks, and digital databases. In the post-COVID world, we need to develop a hybrid approach, offering great services in the building while expanding our range of virtual programs and services. We should continue to expand our community outreach program by partnering with community groups and organizations. The library does not have to do everything by itself. We also should continue to develop programs to overcome the digital divide, both by offering hotspots and laptops to citizens. We also should expand the excellent technology training we provide to people of all ages. Over the past 5 years, we opened our beautiful new children's library and a great adult learning center. Since our building is over 50 years old, it needs constant work to maintain it. For the last 18 years, I was responsible for facilities management and construction at 2 major CUNY colleges. I can continue to help our excellent library management team to ensure that all the construction gets done according to plan and within budget. It's also very important that our library continue to do more with less. All that we accomplished over the past 5 years occurred while maintaining balanced budgets with little or no tax increase. In fact, the proposed budget you will vote on April 13th also has no tax increase. As a native of Port Washington, I am so proud of our library. I pledge to continue to utilize my experience and expertise to help our library to deal with change and become better than ever. It would be an honor to continue to serve as your trustee. I ask for your vote on April 13th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. And if all the candidates can keep their video on as we move to questions, that would be good too. Now we'll hear from Gillian Miller for her opening remarks. Gillian, hi.
Hi everyone. I am Gillian Miller and I'm very happy to be here. I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Port Washington and Manhasset for running this event, as well as my fellow candidates and for all of you for joining us. I moved to Port Washington in 2017 with my then 2-year-old daughter and my husband. We were looking for a community that offered a real town feel while still being accessible to the city where we both worked. And as you all know, Port Washington is that town. My first experience here was actually volunteering to come out and talk to some library staff about that beautiful new children's library that was opened recently. I have worked in libraries for over 15 years after completing my Master's of Library Science from SUNY Buffalo and my certification in Library and Nonprofit Management from LIU. I have done many roles for libraries, including library manager. I've been a project manager for library construction, overseeing the renovation of more than 10 libraries. I have been a manager of innovation, charged with integrating innovation from all business sectors into the work of libraries. And my current role as the coordinator of early learning services and the executive director of the Universal Pre-Kindergarten program for Queens Public Library. Outside of my work, I have co-founded and I am the past president of the New York City Early Learning Network, which is a network of over 12 organizations, cultural institutions, media outlets, and government entities working together to raise the learning outcomes of young children in New York City. My work with families, as well as my history bringing innovation to libraries through building design and programming, would make me a unique would give me, I should say, a unique perspective in becoming a trustee for this public library. So as I walked around, socially distantly collecting all of the signatures needed to get on this ballot, I spoke to over 100 people about what they thought or what their experiences were with the Port Washington Public Library, and almost universally, everybody told me how much they loved it. But then I would push a little more to find out what it was that they had used our wonderful library for. And most everybody, after saying, would come down to books. As a trustee, I feel it is so important that the public be made aware not only of the vast resources that the library uses their funds to provide, but that the community really see those resources in action. I believe the library should adopt an omnichannel approach to reaching our community. I mean, how many touch points do we have with Amazon or Target or any number of businesses that want you to keep them in mind when you go about your daily life? Our great library should be your first thought when you go, what could I do with my kids today while they're on school break? It should be the very first thing you think of, our outdoor music events, when you look across the
Time.
Thanks. So I want to thank you all. Sorry for going over time, but I really want to make sure that the public's money is properly spent.
No, that's a new
The public
sentence.
gets the benefit of it.
Thank you. That was a new sentence. So we have to watch the timing. Okay, thank you. And now we will move on to questions. We will start, the first question will be Nancy, Bill, and then Gillian. And then we will rotate the order as we move on. And here is the first question. How is the library dealing with Port's diverse populations? And do you have suggestions for further outreach projects? Nancy, it's all yours.
We have a number of events and classes for people in diverse populations, but I've always felt, and I know the board does too, that we could do better in outreach and going to meet with them. They don't all have to come to the library. We could go to the various communities and interest them in what's going on. I think that there have been several ideas in the works. One would be having a bookmobile that could travel and see seniors where they are most likely to be, to apartment complexes, to Manor Haven in areas where there are people that don't speak English very well or can't get to the library. And I think those are ways that we could do more outreach with them.
Thank you. Bill?
This has actually been an issue that I've been very concerned with. I mentioned earlier that I've been a big proponent of our investing in overcoming the digital divide. We've begun to offer programs. For example, there's a laundry on Manor Haven Boulevard where we've offered ESL classes. We've also worked together with Our Lady of Fatima Church to offer ESL. There's the Adult Center in Manor Haven, which we've thought about being able to work with the town to use when it's done as a COVID test site, also for training. We've also worked closely with the schools and have begun to work with them in distributing various equipment for use by students who need help with the digital divide. And I think I mentioned that we have a great tech training program that really we have to publicize more. I also think we should develop a database of volunteers in Port Washington, many of whom work in ESL, but there are other volunteers who could work with other in other ways, like helping people with their tech needs, doing training. And we have such a great town with so many great people that the sky's the limit. And I don't think that we should stop at the library walls, and we should be out there in the community working to help all of the people of Port Washington.
Thank you. Gillian?
I think that the library has some really great programming that happens for all levels of our community, but there's always people that we're not reaching with our traditional programming and even with programming that would benefit them. One of the ways that I would really love for the library to be able to reach more people would be to utilize not only the information we have about all of the people that use our library, so we know who they are, where they live, when they check out books and what kinds of books they check out. I think it's important that the library really look at our customers, see what it is that they want, maybe doing some outreach, but also doing some in-reach, maybe offering people a way for them to tell us what it is they want or why they haven't checked out a book in a year, and look at that to help us to develop those programs that people are looking for right now. I think there's also a benefit to doing more outreach and partnership with volunteers who have an inroads into the vast community that is Port Washington.
Thank you. This next question is almost like a follow-up to the one I just asked. The library is located in the center of town, but a distance away from Manor Haven, where the library once had a temporary library. What are your ideas for a satellite library? Where would it be located? How would it be staffed? And Bill, you're first on this one.
Thank you. As I mentioned, it used to be called the Senior Center, but now it's called the Adult Services Center, I believe, in Manor Haven. I think that that's a location where we could discuss with the town setting up an alternate site. I think we should work with a library foundation to see if we could raise money to equip that site and to staff it. We could possibly even staff it with volunteers. Something I think it would be very interesting getting high school students to be involved in. I also think there are community organizations that I mentioned. I know Our Lady of Fatima has a lot of programming. They may be able to expand. I also think that the new virtual library that we've succeeded in developing could be able to be used to reach those areas. We've also talked about, as I believe both Nancy and Gillian mentioned, getting a van of some kind that could go into not just Manor Haven, but other parts of Port Washington where seniors or others may need services. We have a town that can afford to make some investments. We have the foundation could help us raise money to do it. And I think that this period with Black Lives Matter and other issues has shown us that the digital divide continues to be a problem, and we need to be aggressive in meeting it.
Thank you. Gillian.
So I've been a part of many actual outreaches in alternative library services to vast communities, introducing mobile service to Queens. I've helped develop pop-up libraries for around the city where we put ourselves as libraries and library staff out where the people are. And I think that Bill sort of nailed it with looking at the funding and funding streams that we have and really addressing how we can take the funding we have and move it out of the walls of our library. So whether we do that with virtual pop-up opportunities where we give people those hotspots or we push out our Wi-Fi to cover larger networks, whether it's showing up at community events like the local market that happened here, having a presence or tabling. Those are opportunities to really bring the library into a more expanded role within the community and really pushing that view of the library as that third place, that community place, not just the physical walls of our single location.
Okay, thank you. Nancy?
Well, you didn't leave me much, the two of you, the fun of going last, but we already do a lot of those things, from the pop-ups to the meeting with community groups. One thing that you didn't mention, we have a lot of homebound services pre-COVID, where there was a lot of work being done going out to people's houses and apartments. But we really ought to be doing more of that, and finding other venues or increasing. We have the little houses with little library books that have been built. They look like large birdhouses full of books. Maybe they could be larger. We also used to give books out at the train station, and I miss that a lot. And I think we should do more of that, and perhaps have it at the farmers market, as you suggested, Gillian, and just get out there.
Okay, thank you. Our next question has been, I know, on people's mind for many years. Do you think the library needs an addition to the parking lot? And if so, where and how? How would you keep people attending landmark programs out of the library parking lot? Now, I know it's been a problem. Gillian, you're first.
Well, I'll be honest, since I am a little new to the community and I am of a walking mind, I tend to use alternative transportation to get to the library, but that isn't to say that that's for everyone. And I know that this is a distance for many of the people that need to use it. And so I think that it would be good to do an evaluation of how our parking lot of the library is currently being used, how often, when is it most at use, and to look to see how we can introduce other forms of our library services to better utilize the space that's available to us. So whether that's looking at other locations for parking lot expansion, or is that expanding services at our most peak times so that we're spread beyond the walls, thus alleviating some of that parking lot overpacking. And then again, I guess it would be to evaluate the town and look to see whether there is underutilized space within a travel distance to the library. I think that gets to it.
Thank you. Nancy?
Oh, yes, indeed. We have been concerned. All of us have been driving round and round and round trying to find a parking spot. The biggest issue I think that we need to address is the crunch times when there's an overlap of library programs and landmark programs. And one of the suggestions has been, but we really haven't followed up on it, is using the town dock in a way that where there might be vans down there that would bring have people be able to park down at the town dock and have vans bring them up to wherever the programs are, either the library or the landmark. And after a lot of looking at space and over the years as I've been on the board, that seems to me to be the most likely way of handling this.
Thank you. Bill?
One of the first things that I found out when I joined the board was that this is a very, very big issue. I mentioned I've been a manager at several CUNY schools, most recently Queens College, which is also in a mass transit wasteland. And I set up a shuttle bus going to the local hubs for the subway to help get people to campus. We'd suggested, as Nancy said, looking at possibly allowing people to park at the town dock. I think this always was something of a problem because of commuters. And with the post-COVID world, not sure that the town is going to have the parking shortage that it's had in the past. So I do think it's a perfect time for us to take another look at this, to possibly have a student group at one of the local schools do a study for us and try to figure out how we can help to deal with this. I also think sitting down with a landmark and coming up with some way, short of having someone sitting at the front gate to welcome people in and out of the parking lot, there may be something that we can do. But it's definitely an issue, and we will have to keep trying to address it.
Thank you. This question is directed to Gillian. What has your involvement in the Port Washington Library been since you moved to Port Washington? Have you been a regular attendee at library board meetings?
So I have attended some board meetings more recently with the ability to attend them virtually. As a working parent, it is hard for me to carve out the time, prior. But I have been very active in using the Port Washington Public Library, particularly the children's room and the programs and services that are provided out of that space. I've also used and been greatly appreciative of print services available there, as well as some adult programming. I have it was one of the very first things I did when I moved here, was to get myself, my husband, and my daughter public library cards so that we could be active members within the library. And, I really just find that I am utilizing it more and more, which is where sort of my reasoning for coming here and for trying to be a part of this great community.
Thank you. Nancy or Bill, would you like to respond to that? You're entitled to if you wish to.
Sure. I've been coming to the Port Washington Library since I was 5 years old, when my parents moved to town. It used to be in a different part of the town, which is now the Polish American Museum. And when I moved back to town in 2004, I started to get very interested in the library and started to, look at ways that I could become a part of it, and eventually decided that being a member of the board would be a great way to do it. I just partially retired the end of December, and now I'll have more time to devote. And I'm really looking forward to helping our great management team of Keith Klang and James Hutter, as well as all the staff and the other board members and the community, to make our library even better.
Thank you. And Nancy, would you like to say something?
Well, my mother was a school librarian, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I grew up in the Pittsburgh Library, which I always adored. So the library was important to me when we moved to Port Washington, that we'd be in a town like Port Washington with a great library. And I was involved fairly early on, not just with my kids, but I became a member of various committees, the Health Advisory Committee, and because I was interested in medical topics. I was a medical writer at the time, and so I was on that committee, and I just spend a lot of time there. So I felt that I should be doing something for the library, I think, as all of us did, and that's how I became involved in the board.
Thank you. Our next question is for everybody. To what extent should our library have a commitment to books? How important are books to a library? And Nancy, you're first.
I think they're very important. I think they are what a library was meant to be originally, a place for books. We all know the smell of books. When you walk in, it smells like a library. But we also need to be aware of all the digital varieties that we can be using. And I think they're all partners. I don't think one is more important than the other. But I know in the past we've talked about us being, and I did tonight, a community center. But to me, it's a community center with books and digital books. So I think it's really important to keep the books there.
Thank you. Bill?
Definitely, I think that books are the heart and soul of a library. However, in today's world, there are different kinds of books. There are ebooks, there are audiobooks, there are digital technologies. And while books are the centerpiece and should continue to be, I mean, that's one of the reasons why the new children's library is so wonderful, because kids can come in there and be surrounded by books. But I think that we've got to stay, on top of, as I said, the digital divide, and be able to bring our books, our technology, and our knowledge out to the public. The Gutenberg Bible started books as the centerpiece for spreading intellectual knowledge to the world. Today, we have many different modalities to do that, and the library's job is to get all of that out to our people. And that should be our calling card in the future. We're working on a new strategic plan, and that figuring out how to get books out to the public should be our way, I believe, our major mission.
Thank you. Gillian?
I'm a literacy professional. I'm a librarian by trade. There is no forum in which I would tell you that a library shouldn't have books. A library should. But the books are not the end-all be-all of the library. We've all said it. A library is a place of information, and information at one time was primarily brought to you from books. But I think we know, and we've spoken about the importance of delivering information to people in the ways that they want it. So I think it is the role of the library to be a place to find books, to start your literacy learning, to progress your information, and that can be through books, through media, through databases, through being introduced verbally, through programmatic aspects. Libraries are really places of information, and books are one way of getting it. They'll always be there, and they always should, but they should be there to support the information learning, and it's the community's desire that really should drive the library. And so I would never say go without books, though, and I want to make that very clear.
Okay, thank you. Now, I have two questions that are sort of that follow each other. The first one is, how do you think technology might affect the role of the library in the next 5 years? And the first will be Bill.
There's a famous Churchillian statement, which is never let a great crisis go to waste. And COVID was such a crisis. And I think that our library has done an amazing job in proving that technology can keep a library going, even if it has to be physically, closed for a while. I think we should build on that. I said during my my speech, that it's very important to move to a hybrid approach. Our library hopefully will be able to fully open in the near future. But I think that we've shown that we can have services online. We can have people be able to share breakout rooms for discussion groups. It's really a whole new world. And I think our library is incredibly, has proven itself to be able to handle this. And I can see many, many ways that we're going to expand that over the next 5 years.
Thank you. And Gillian.
So libraries have always been a place of innovation. Even from the beginning, they had those, massive server rooms, and, you could see those first computers. Libraries were the first places that people were able to regularly use a personal computer before that became this thing that lives in your pocket. But now this thing that lives in your pocket should be your library. That should be where the library is looking. We should live with you through, forms of of not only engaging virtually, which I think, COVID, as Bill said, really pushed the envelope on that. We should be looking to engage with people where their eyes are. That would be in a virtual space. That can also look like an address to that digital divide. We should be offering the newest, the latest, those tech sandbox experiences, but also making sure that we're reaching our customers basically so that they are not falling behind, so that we are addressing the divide that we know is there in our community. And so we should be looking for ways to close that up, and the library should be sort of on the precipice of that.
Thank you. And Nancy?
Right before COVID, the library was poised to move into the digital world in a very big way, and had already begun by developing the beginnings of the design for the lab on the ground floor. We had brought in lots of very digital machines. I think one included a digital sewing machine, although I don't know if they ever actually got it. And our technology department is terrific, and they moved very quickly with COVID into broadening all of our offerings, including, I think, trundling one of those huge 3D printers into a staff's house, where right at the beginning they started manufacturing face shields with the 3D printer round the clock. I think they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of creativity, and we are really in a good place now with moving into the digital world.
Thank you. Now, this is the sort of a follow-up. Should the library do more to help students who do not own computers? And if so, how? And Gillian, you're first on this one.
So, I mean, obviously, the library should be making every effort to help students who do not have home devices. We're lucky that the Port Washington school system has been able this year to provide devices to all of the students, but that doesn't mean that they were able to provide Wi-Fi, which is necessary to conduct virtual school from home. It's also necessary to do beyond that. So I think that really looking to partner to draw on the community that we have here at Port, I would, be interested to see fundraising around having Wi-Fi available services, even if it's via a mobile, a mobile unit that could be brought to places that really need that capacity, because the devices themselves are needed. They're needed by parents to learn so that they can help their students use them. And I think that the library is really that place where we learn how to do things. And so I think that beyond just offering the hardware, there's the soft technology, the learning aspect, that those devices really, we should be looking to lead our students and sort of lead that progress for our community.
Thank you. Nancy?
We're already doing that to some extent. We have over 100 hotspots that were bought in the past year, paid for by Friends of the Library, and we do lend computers, but obviously we need to do a lot more with that. I'd like to double the number of hotspots that we have, increase our broadband width for the parking lot crowd if we want to do that. I think that we're on our way to doing all of this. The question is what kinds of computers now beyond what the school district offers and what can be supported by the hotspots.
Thank you. Bill?
In my role as Vice President, Finance and Administration at Queens College, and before that at Kingsborough Community College, I've had to deal with this issue for people in New York City. And, the problems are gargantuan compared to here in Port Washington. So we've been working on this, and I think our library has been making progress. This is where community partnerships, though, come in to play. And I really think that we have to continue working with the school district. We have to work with all of the various entities in Port Washington that work with different communities, whether they be seniors or pre-K or whatever, to help get technology out to these people. Fundraising, as was mentioned, through the foundation or Friends of the Library or the Education Foundation. I'm on the advisory board of the Education Foundation. I think some joint efforts should be made with them and continue to be made with the school district. It's going to be a problem that's going to take day in and day out work to help everybody in the town get the skills they need to succeed in the modern era.
Thank you. Our next question is a budget question. What kind of capital reserves does the library have? And how confident are you that you will have enough if you discover you need a new roof or you need to repair the elevator or some other issue? And the first person is Nancy.
The library has fairly significant capital funds. In fact, we are over, I believe it's supposed to be 10% you're supposed to have, though I may be wrong. We have a great deal at the moment since we've paid off our bond. And so we do have funding so that we don't have to wait for a rainy day, but we could start using it and have started using it because we have significant expenses with redoing parts of the roof, the facade, the windows, etc. We have been fairly conservative in the amount that we keep aside. In fact, that the question has always been on the board is how much do we want to keep and how much should we be spending? But I think the board feels fairly confident that and comfortable that we are in good shape.
Thank you. Bill?
I've been chair of the budget committee for the last year and been a member of the budget finance committee. I was one of the people who felt that when we paid off our bonds that we should use that $500,000 a year as sort of a preventive maintenance fund. We have a 5-year facilities plan that we've been working on. We have, as the questioner mentioned, found there are problems. In fact, in the construction of the children's library, we discovered there were some problems with the envelope of the building. So we've been investing and we'll continue to invest. And I think we have more than enough money. And we're following, as I said in my speech, a very hands-on analysis of our capital needs, our preventive maintenance needs. And I'm very confident that we're meeting that challenge and that we have the funds for almost anything that could possibly happen.
Thank you. Gillian?
Well, like the good librarian that I am, I wanted to make sure that I went back and reviewed the proposed budget so that I wouldn't speak out of turn. And I think the questioner can also, feel confident that that information is public. They're able to go and look at what the library is planning to spend to continue its building operations. I think that from looking at the proposed budget and looking at previous budgets, the public library has a great setup to be able to invest and continue to invest in necessary building renovations. And by necessary, it touches back on what Bill said: envelopes, HVACs, roofs, windows, all those things that you need to make a building function. And to have that reserve available is obviously worth asking, but I think that it looks the library to be in a great position to be able to cover those expenses, as well as to continue to look to the future of the building and making sure that the budget will cover those future renovations as well.
Thank you. Now here's another budget question from somebody with a different perspective. Increasing the library budget might be a concern to many residents. Are there any economies you might like to introduce to address these concerns? And the first one on that is Bill.
We have been, I think, making a major effort to use technology to help with the efficiencies in the library. We have a great technology consultant who's been working with us for years. I also think that Port Washington is part of the Nassau Library System, which does an amazing job of sharing services, which is a way to increase our efficient utilization of funding. For example, we don't have our own catalog. It's really a Nassau wide catalog. And I think there's always more that you can do. It's been my job for my whole career to look for ways that the public sector could make improved use of its funding. And as a member of the board, member of the budget committee, we're always looking for new ways to do that. One of the reasons we've been able to, have a great library with a balanced budget and with little or no tax increases every year is by managing our dollars well, and also getting the efficiencies we need out of systems and out of our people. We have an amazing staff, and they just do an outstanding job.
Thank you. Gillian?
I apologize, but can you just repeat the question?
Of course. Let's see, where was it? It was about economies in the budget. I just misplaced it. Oh, here it is. Increasing the library budget might be a concern to many residents. Forgive me, this should not happen, but it does. Are there any economies you might like to introduce to address those concerns? You want me to read it again?
No one is available to take your call.
God, I'm sorry. Should I read it again?
No, thank you. So it sounds like they're really interested in how the library budget could perhaps go further. And I think that it is, and they mentioned it is important to the community that we keep the budget balanced and that we take into account the current economic standings of our community and our community residents, really addressing sort of what it is that the library is providing and sort of economically how are we providing it, and looking to keep those costs manageable to make sure that we aren't increasing the costs and pushing that out to the public right now, as the public generally is, is in need right now. We're in crisis. And so I think that having that balanced budget without increases is important. The services that are provided by the library, the amazing staff, the amazing programs, the innovations and the changes without needing to increase funding is something that is unique and should be something that the trustees continue to push forth. And as a potential trustee, I think it would be sort of on the forefront of our work to make sure that we are indeed, representing that public trust with their funds and that they are getting a value from that in their library without it feeling burdensome.
Thank you. Nancy?
Well, I think that we have always been fairly careful and making sure that the budget balances and that the actual cost of running the library for a year stays well within the budget. The one thing I would suggest, I agree with both of you, the one thing I would suggest is that we probably could do a little bit better with fundraising. It's been tough, not just this year, but the last few years. It's getting harder and harder to raise funds. So it would be nice if we had more of a cushion there. And I know that both the foundation and the Friends have talked about this probably a lot and are hoping to improve on that. But in the meantime, our needs are being met, and I don't happen to feel that what we are spending is excessive. And we're fiscally responsible, and take a look at the budget. It's out there, you can see.
Okay, thank you. All right, here is the next question. What is your sense of how the library serves different parts of the community? Children, seniors, teens, young adults, busy parents, and commuters. And which of these do you think the library is serving best? And which do you think are potentially underserved? And how can they be brought into the library? That's a mouthful. Anyway, Gillian, you get the privilege of going first.
Loaded questions.
Should I read it again?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So, I mean, traditionally in libraries, we know that I'm not going to go out and judge who gets served the best. I think that our constituents are served in a variety of ways. And I would say that library industry as a whole is seeing sort of our teen population kind of falling off in service capacity. Now, the Port Washington Public Library has a gorgeous and new space dedicated to teens, but I truly think that there is sort of this idea that if you build it, they will come. And so I would love for the library to do a deeper outreach into our teen population, maybe looking to bring in some more partners who are really dedicated to doing the work with teens, and also maybe looking to bring in more teens. But as far as who do we serve the best, I mean, my personal use of the library is with children and adults, and I couldn't even begin to tell you, I think the library does such an amazing job of serving this community. But since we had to pick, I had to put it out there.
Thank you. Okay. Nancy.
I think we do an excellent job serving children and a very good job serving the elderly population. We've improved a lot at serving teens, and it was just kind of getting going, and we were renovating their space a bit more right before COVID, and that has come to a bit of a halt. But what I'd like to really, really see is more people in their 40s and 50s in the library or using library services. It's always been difficult. You come when you have little kids, you come when you're older to go to a lot of the programs, but once you hit 40, it's like there's a wall. We've looked into ways of reaching out to them, and frankly, I don't think we've succeeded yet. And I'd be very interested if anybody else has some good ideas for outreach.
Thank you. Bill.
I agree with a lot of what was said. I think that we've done an excellent job with children. And in fact, I think we serve the population that Nancy just mentioned when they bring their children to the children's room. But I agree that that is an age group that there may be more that we can do. We are, as I mentioned, doing a strategic plan, and there's been focus groups with people in the community to find out what they feel they would like to see in the new modern library. I think that there's been such an explosion of virtual offerings that we could seize on some of them and work together with others to offer, like have some group do a talk and then have breakout groups after that where people come together and talk about it on the library, in an event sponsored by the library. There's the teens are a continuing issue. I have a 19-year-old son who used to spend a lot of his time at the library, I think as much socializing as studying, but working with his friends on projects. We do a good job, and I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback we get during the strategic plan to see which new programming we need to reach underserved people.
Thank you. This is another question about the digital divide. How do you feel? No, the digital divide separates our community, but should the library focus so strongly on virtual experiences and cutting edge technology? Would it also help the community members who spend their days distracted by technology to have places to retreat from technology? Do you think it would have value to promote this? Nancy, you're first.
Yes, I think it would have value to promote this. We have those places. We have corners with overstuffed armchairs and books, actual books, and all over the library. And I don't know that we've ever said, come sit in a squishy chair and read a book here. I think that's something that maybe we could think about doing, but we have to be able to do both. The squishy chair and the electronic device. But you'll see people pre-COVID and after COVID sitting in corners and reading. They're not on their devices. They're reading a book, and maybe their backs, they turn the chair around and their backs are to the rest of the library, and they're in their own little space, their own little quiet space. And we provide a computer area and devices as well. So the choice is there. People have to know it's there.
Thank you. Bill?
I think that we, of course, after COVID can open up the library for more activities. But even before COVID, I was really happy when I got the April newsletter to see that we're working on an Earth Day event down at the Sousa Band Show, where we'll be putting together music and other events for anyone who wants to come. And I've discussed this with the board and with Keith. You know, I do think it would be great to take the library on the road. I mean, maybe we could do something in the future up in Manor Haven Park, or maybe we could do something, you know, at other, you know, places around town where we sponsor events and work with other people. I believe the Earth Day events with a number of groups in town. We have some money that we received in a bequest for maritime, and we've started talking about ways that we can do more events on the water. So, you know, the virtual is really important, but there's a lot that we can do out and about Port Washington that would be wonderful.
Thank you. Gillian?
The library has always offered and continues to offer so many wonderful programs. I mean, in COVID times, we'll get hung up and our brains won't remember a year ago when the doors were open. But to get stuck in thinking that the library is a solely virtual place, or a place where people, you know, cannot experience things without a virtual life. I mean, go in and you'll see the people attending the amazing author talks and book programs and the story times from the amazing staff. I mean, the programs that come out of the staff of the Port Washington Public Library are phenomenal. There's also, and actually I was in an article in School Library Journal about this idea of nookdom, of this place in the library where you get to feel like you are alone with your book, with your literary world. And libraries really do provide that, even if it is a chair, even if it isn't physically a place where you go to hide. The library in of itself always provides that to the community, and it's such a special feeling, particularly for young people, but also for anyone in the community. And when the doors of libraries are able to be reopened, I think that that opportunity will exist again. And so just, you know, making that more in the forefront of the questioner's mind.
Thank you. All right. You mentioned COVID. Here is a question that came through concerning it. First, have you been back to the library since it reopened last summer? How do you think the library has handled opening since the COVID-19 pandemic? And what suggestions do you have for addressing patron needs during the pandemic. Okay, and Bill, you're first.
I think we've done a phenomenal job since the pandemic of gradually opening the library to patrons. I've been there more than a couple of times, have walked around, seen what's functioning, what isn't. And, you know, the curbside distribution of books has been handled very, very well. You know, as I said, you never should let a great crisis go to waste. And I think that we've learned new ways to interact with the public, and we need to continue to do that, however long COVID lasts. And if there's ever another pandemic like this, I think we're ready.
Thank you. Gillian.
So I have been to the library. I will say that safety was a first priority, particularly in my family. And so we did not venture out, should I say, during really very much during our lockdown period. But that isn't to say that I didn't interact with the library. We were able to attend an amazing virtual program that was offered last spring. We have been to the outside of the building just because my daughter so desperately wanted to get back in and play in that children's room. And I told her that we could walk past, and that made her happy. You know, but when I did go in the library recently, I mean, to see all of the changes and to still get that warm feeling that you're looking for when you enter that community space, even knowing the safety protocols, even seeing just the eyes behind the mask light up in welcome when you first walk through the door, you see those sanitary precautions, the plexiglass, the face shields, the, you know, different ways in which the library has accepted the fact that we are in a pandemic and we do want to keep our community safe while still providing them with a variety of resources. And I think that they've done a commendable job.
Thank you. Nancy.
I too think that the library's done a great job at serving patrons, but keeping the patrons and the staff safe with a variety of methods. And they're constantly coming up with new ways and looking at what works, what doesn't work. I've been back, I don't know, 10 or 15 times. I have to get my library fix. And what I do is I run around on the various floors. I probably look a little nuts. You know, stop and look at what's going on, and then run out again. I have not borrowed any books, actual books. I have really multiplied the number of ebooks I get now. And I think that's been terrific, except for the fact you can only have them for 2 weeks. And when you put them on hold, they all come to you at the same time. But I am definitely looking forward to having more people able to be in, or everybody in. And I think that it's been handled in a very calm and practical way.
Okay, thank you. Now we have 2 questions on staff concerns. Can you comment on what can be done to support the staff better during and after the pandemic? What do you think the greatest needs of the staff are? And Gillian, you're first on that one.
It would be presumptuous for me to say what the greatest needs of the staff are. I think that there has probably been done and not shared with the public deep conversations with staff members about their own personal needs during this pandemic time, their own personal comfort levels, and what it is that can best could make them their best self at work. I do know as an employee of a library how important it is, the work that we do reaching communities, and that you are torn between what you want to give and what you feel comfortable giving at this time. And so I would say it would involve conversations with the staff at many levels, And it would involve looking deeply at the work that each individual does for the library and how that work can continue to be done in the most practical way. So for some staff, it will always be face-to-face with our public. For some staff, it may be that virtual work or working from home is ideal for the work that they do. And that would really be on an individual basis.
Thank you. Nancy?
The team method that they're using now, where half the staff is at home and half the staff is on the premises, and it changes every other day, seems to be working. I think as more and more people get vaccinated, the staff feels more comfortable and safe. And now librarians, I believe, are up there at the top of almost the top of the list to get vaccinated as essential workers. So I would think that would make things feel a lot better. But it is a tough working atmosphere, and they seem to be managing, and I have not heard any concerns or complaints from the staff, though they would actually go to Keith or James, I'm sure, if they had issues. I think we're doing all right, and you know, I too am happy to see them when I walk in, and masked or not, that there they are and they're ready to help.
Thank you. Bill?
When I ran 5 years ago, I said that one of the most important things we were going to have to deal with was management succession. And I think we did an outstanding job bringing on Keith and then having Keith replaced with James. And it's really the senior management in a building, whether it's school principals, President of the United States, or you know, a library director who sets the tone. I think our staff feel respected. We did also, by the way, sign a new contract with our staff recently, which I think met their needs while also meeting the needs of the taxpayers. And there's an open, you know, door. I mean, you know, when I've been in the library, I say hello to staff members. We always invite a member of the staff association to come to our board meetings. And I think they feel, though there may be exceptions, of course, that they're respected and that we've done everything we can to keep the library going during COVID without endangering them.
Thank you. This is another staff question, and then we'll go on to one other thing. When will the current staff contract end, and what issues do you see as most important? And Nancy, you're first on this one.
I believe there was an overlap here. So, but I believe the current contract is 3 years. I think the biggest concern may be health benefits, especially given where we are right now. Sometimes in the past, they have been more important than other times, but I think that is important. The other thing that seems to have been something that we had to discuss a lot with the staff was payment for freelancers and benefits for freelancers or part-timers, pardon me, not freelancers, part-timers and some freelancers. So I'm assuming that that will come up again, but who knows what is going to really be the issue in a few years. I do not.
Okay. Thank you. Bill?
As I just mentioned, we literally just signed a new contract, agreed to a new contract with the union. It was probably the smoothest negotiation I've seen in my years working for New York City, and certainly for CUNY, because there is mutual respect. We were able to, you know, come to an agreement on salary, and some of the issues like healthcare, you know, may become more of an issue, but with the Affordable Care Act back in vogue now, we may be able to, have enhancements through that. So I think that labor relations are very good. And again, we have an open door, and if there's an issue, we have been able to deal with it.
Thank you. Gillian?
So I won't, speak on the current contract dates, as Nancy answered that question. As far as staff and people who work in libraries and in the library industry, and as a union member myself, I would say that health benefits are always important, as well as making sure that library workers are, being recognized fairly for the work they do. And Port Washington Public Library does a good job of recognizing, and you can see in the budget the amount of money that goes towards paying for the staff and the benefits. And that, speaks to the negotiations, and it speaks to the respect that goes to those who work in libraries. Now, one cannot presume to know what the biggest need will be in 5 years, and we can only project and look back and make sure that in any negotiation you go in with an open mind and with a willing to negotiate and with a respect for each other. And I would hope that any future contracts would be entered that way.
Thank you. Well, this will be our last question before closing remarks. So this is a chance for you to shine. What program, service, or part of the library do you think is a hidden gem about which the community should know more? And Bill, I'll start with you.
I mentioned it earlier. I think that our tech training is absolutely outstanding and is something that is incredibly needed by everyone. Partly because technology changes so often that next week we'll need training on something that didn't even exist this week. But I think they're something we should look at. We should certainly publicize more. Gillian, I think, mentioned that, and Nancy and I have been talking about this at board meetings. We don't do as good a job as we should at publicizing what the library has available. I was talking last week with someone who, actually car wash, who needed help with statistics. She was a high school student, college student. And I said, well, did you know that the library has tutor.com? No, she didn't know that. A lot of our databases, in fact, aren't used to the extent that they should be. So I think that we need to get word out about what we already offer and look for new things that the public needs in order to help them in any way that we can. But tech training is definitely one of our strengths, and we don't publicize our available services as well as we should. Maybe something we need to work on more.
Thank you. Gillian.
So I would say that the library itself is the hidden gem, and that it is the things that you need that you don't know the library has. There are so many amazing services, amazing things that the library produces for you. I mean, even how to grieve your taxes. My husband learned how to grieve his taxes. He said, oh, well, I have to go to one of the services. I said, no, you don't. The library is going to teach you how to do it. And he went and he learned. And knowing that the library has such vast services, I think is the hidden gem of each community, in particular this community. And I would, emphasize again that the library must make those 40s and 50s and people in those 30s, that age range, know and push it out to them in the ways that they're willing to accept information, the great many things that the library does. But I will also say that the hidden gem and heart of any library is the staff that works there, and all of the information and information professionals can give to the community members. So make sure when you do go into the library that you utilize them for what they're there for.
Thank you. And Nancy?
Well, I agree with both Bill and Gillian. about the need to market the services that many are hidden from many people because they just don't know what's happening. But I'd also like to add the local history museum department, and which more and more people are learning about. But we found that over the last year or so, services like ancestry.com have picked up a lot, I think, as people are sitting at home and here's a place to go and they find it. But the materials that we have are amazing, and the amount of material online that's available to anybody in the world is incredible. And we are known outside of Port Washington for that. I'd like to see us more known here in Port Washington for that.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say that whenever I moderate in Port Washington, I am amazed by the talented people who are willing to voluntarily give up their time to make the town a better place. So now we will go on to closing statements. And Nancy, you have the lead.
Following up on what you said, we have a terrific library. As we've seen with COVID this past year, our library is capable of meeting many challenges. Now we must get people back together safely and maintain its high quality and depth of services. We have to stay current with technology and even ahead, and increase programs aimed at the underserved and the special needs population. And we must do this in the face of cuts from state and federal budgets without placing the burden on the taxpayer. I love this library, and I love that our community is proud of it. I like that feeling you have when you walk in, something I'm still really missing right now, the feeling that you're with friends, that all things are possible. But how do we keep it this way? We've all heard that libraries are irrelevant and that soon they'll be gone. But given our resources, not this one. I've been just one person of a 7-member board of trustees. We have an excellent board, if I may say so, and I'd like to thank them. They're great to serve with. We don't always agree, but I think we work well together to fulfill the library's mission. If reelected, I will make it my business to keep costs under control and to develop creative methods of funding to help minimize tax increases, and at the same time encourage our talented staff to keep doing their thing. In today's world, knowledge and information are key, but when you come right down to it, people still want to read a book. Thank you for coming, everyone, to listen, and to the League for giving us the opportunity to be here. Stay safe.
Thank you, Nancy. Bill, you're on next.
Thank you. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this candidates forum, and thank all of the people on Zoom for attending. Some people have called the library a hidden gem. I call it a priceless gem that serves the educational and cultural needs of everyone in Port Washington. We should all be particularly proud of the ability of the library staff to develop and implement new and innovative programs and services, and also to respond to new challenges like the pandemic. As I discussed in my opening remarks, I'm very proud of what the library has accomplished during my 5-year tenure on the board. I pledge that I will continue to utilize my experience and expertise in finance, technology, facilities management, and education to help our great library management and staff to develop and implement ideas that make our library even better. It would be an honor to continue to serve as your library trustee. I ask for your vote on April 13th. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Gillian, your turn.
Thank you. In closing, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and my fellow candidates and everybody out there in the virtual world who was listening with us tonight. I want to leave you thinking about what was said about our great library. While my experience is not that of the other two who spoke with you tonight, the question really for me and for you is, are you looking for something different? Do you want to make sure that your library is putting forth the effort to reach you in whatever way you prefer? How can Port Washington Public Library make a difference in your life, the life of your family, and the lives of your neighbors? And when you think on this and you come to a conclusion, please vote with that in mind. I want to take our library to new heights in our community, to new outreach avenues, and utilize all that the world makes available to a library, not only what has been traditionally worked on. Please go out and make your voice heard on April 13th. Let the community know how important the library, the services that it provides are to you, but also how you want to see its continued viability and who will bring it there. Thank you all so much.
And thanks to all of you, this forum will be available for viewing on the League of Women Voters of Port Washington Manhasset's website. And I hope you will direct your friends and neighbors to watch it. You are an outstanding group of candidates. And again, thank you. And we will conclude.